Hello, Kelly.
Hello, Adriana.
Let me.
Nice hat.
Thank you. It says
Switzerland.
because
The land of sweeter.
the land of the chocolat and the watches and
The
banks.
what?
The land of the chocolate, the watches, and the banks.
What does sweeter mean, though? Sweet.
I don't think Switzerland means anything.
Oh, wow.
I think maybe it does.
It's the land of the sweet.
It's the land of the cheese. Let's pretend Switzerland means cheese.
Okay.
The land of the cheese.
Okay,
Well, first of all, welcome to another episode of Creative Olives.
Welcome.
Today we are. Who are we interviewing, Kelly?
Dulce.
And how do you know Dulce?
I will let her explain how we met.
Okay.
A little bit of suspense. So, tell me now, what's the thing that you learned this week or a fact that you want to share with me?
Okay, I'm gonna go with this fun fact because if anyone is a fan of Amadeus, I think this is a fun little something. I know you haven't watched the movie, which I'm a little disappointed in. It is it actually is my favorite movie.
I know.
So the movie Amadeus, which was shot in Prague, shot in some old opera houses or theaters, including the Till Theater, which I think is known also as the Estate Theater. And the reason why I bring up these theaters is because Amadeus was shot with candlelight. So, because that's how they would light things.
It's like Barry Lyndon?
Yeah, it's very similar to Barry Lyndon. I don't know if like Amadeus was like 100% natural light. I think they might have used some stuff for other scenes, but because they were working in old buildings and old architecture, historical buildings, it's not like they had a ton of outlets, not like they had a lot of room, so I think a lot of it was natural lighting. But I know for the Till Theater, they had to light the chandeliers, and now the Till Theater was like built in 1783, I think. But so they had a total of I think 11 chandeliers, and they roughly burnt like 200 candles each, 200 candles on a chandelier. Like, just think how big that is. That's massive. And they would have to, like, rig them up and light these things. And I think in total, the entire movie went through, like, 27,000 or 30,000 candles. I always find it really fascinating that they use candlelight and natural light to shoot these scenes. Because, one, I've done it once, and it gets hot. Because it burns all the oxygen in the room. It gets hot. You kind of get delirious.
Oh, really?
Oh my! When I shot candlelight, I got a little giggles because it does burn the oxygen in the room. Like, you have to have, you know.
I had no idea about this.
Yeah, I got a little silly. I'm sure the rest of the crew got a little silly. We had not consumed alcohol or drugs, so. But anyways, I found it really fascinating because if you watch those scenes, like, they're really pretty. Like, they're really, they're really interestingly lit, and it's all candlelight. And to me, that's like, how cool is that to be able to be like, I just lit with some candles, man. If you find that fascinating and you haven't watched Amadeus, please watch Amadeus. It's a very good movie. Anyways, okay, your turn for your fun fact. Mine was a little long.
It was, but it's okay. We love it. Did you watch the halftime?
I did watch the halftime.
Do you like it?
I did. I mean, I know a lot of people were like, nah, but I thought like.
It was It has hidden.
Well, I think that's what made it fun. I think it as a spectacle, like, you know how like a lot of artists will go big and do a lot of pyrotechnic stuff and all stuff like that. It was like simple, but I gotta tell you the one thing, and I'm sure everyone's talking about it, that I could not get over was his pants. Because
I love those pants.
Well, his butt looked really good in them. I know. I was like, he looks.
Everything looked good.
But I wasn't sure if they fit him properly. But they were like tight on him, and I was like, "Sir, your butt is really standing out."
So it doesn't have to do with the halftime, but you know how during Super Bowl, everyone in America at least, I didn't know that before I came here, but they're looking at the commercials.
Yes, the commercials are a big thing.
Personally, I'm not a fan of the commercials.
Yes.
For a lot of reasons.
Yes.
But there's some that they're good. Anyway, the fun fact that I have for you today is that the first official TV commercial aired in the United States.
Like ever.
In
like
the United States.
The ever first TV commercial.
In the United States.
Okay, go.
I think must be here, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know ever. Like over the world if it was the first time. But in the United States,
yes.
was in July 1st, 1941. So most probably ever because we had the...
I'm surprised 41, yeah. What year was the television created?
Anyway, let me finish.
Okay, go.
Before a baseball game between the Brooklyn Dodgers and Philadelphia Phillies. The advertisement was for Bulova watches? Baluva? I have no idea how to
pronounce it. For watches?
Yeah. And lasted just 10 seconds. And I want you to guess how much it cost.
Because everything cost like 50 cents back then. I bet you it was like $200.
Actually, it was $9.
See, I told you. It's like...
But the equivalent of today...
Yeah, it's probably like 3 million.
No, it's $150.
Oh, shit.
$9. $150, that's it.
Oh my god. And now you look at commercials and the money they spend on it. Insane.
On that note, let's have our guest. Here is Dulce.
Hi. Dulce, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah,
What you do, who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, so my name is Dulce. I'm originally from Guerrero, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But I've lived probably most of my life in the United States, save for a few years. I'm a writer, I'm a consultant, I have also acted, I started in theater, and an eclectic storyteller. And
Love it.
I moved to LA 3 years ago to pursue more of a career in entertainment, specifically within film and TV. And when I moved here, I started working for an organization called Define American, which is a narrative change media organization that works to humanize immigrant stories. And it's an organization that I was familiar with because my career started outside of media. It started with immigration advocacy. Okay. So I was undocumented for many, many years, most of my life. And I did a lot of immigration work, advocacy for immigration reform and just changes in laws. And through that, I had become aware of Define American's work in media. And so when I moved out here and saw that there was an opportunity to join a team, it just felt like the perfect marriage of my world within advocacy, but also working within storytelling to really change the narrative. At Define American, one of our core beliefs is that politics are downstream from culture and that we cannot change the politics of immigration until first we change the culture in which immigrants are seen.
Exactly.
I love that.
That's a little bit how we met.
We actually met at an event that Define American put together. It was a celebration dinner for an actor named Bamajan Bamba, who we worked with many years ago to really help him when he came out as undocumented, as a DACA recipient.
Right.
And this was, he's an actor known for his roles in The Good Place. He was also in Black Panther.
Okay.
And he was seeing all the stuff that was coming around immigrants and all these attacks, and he himself had DACA. And so he reached out to Define American, and we were able to help him come out as undocumented, share his story. And recently, he finally got his green card. So, yeah, congratulations!
Yeah,
at the party.
Awesome.
And so we threw him a party to celebrate.
Yeah.
To celebrate, but also to really highlight the importance of Black immigrants.
Yeah.
When immigrants are typically talked about in media, it's always Latinos, it's always Mexicans specifically. But immigrants, there's many immigrants. I think it's like 1 in 10 African Americans are actually immigrants.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Black immigrants. We need more of their stories, and we actually do study this. We have reports that track immigrant representation across TV, and Black immigrants have always been underrepresented compared to their real life counterparts, all except 1 year, and it was because there was one show that came out, and this one show uplifted it. But it should not be on one show to uplift the representation of an entire group.
Yeah.
But
So, going off of that, could you explain a little bit the work you do? Because this is very specific and it's very important. And I haven't heard about it before I met you. That's why I was like, you should be in our podcast. Me and Adriana would be very interested about this because we educate ourselves, but also, the 5 people who watch this.
There's 6 of us.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I believe that we should, have a more diverse digital space, because it's not only in like the actual space at this point. Could you talk a little bit about what you do in the organization exactly, and maybe where someone can find your findings?
Yeah. So gonna try to keep this like contained because there's so much we do.
Yeah.
So I specifically work in the media and entertainment side. We were talking earlier, like I also did not know that this role existed when I moved to LA, and I was like, I'm gonna go do like film and TV. Like I didn't know that this role existed.
Yeah.
It's but there's actually, you mentioned the Gina Davis Institute before we started, but there's a lot of organizations that do work in Hollywood to advance representation for different groups. It can be Native American, Indigenous representation, Muslim representation, LGBTQ representation, all sorts of representation, and Define American specifically works within immigrant representation, which kind of covers a lot of things because it's very intersectional. And so what we do is, specifically what I do is we'll consult. So since Define American started, we've consulted on over 125 different TV shows and films.
Oh, amazing.
Across 23 different networks. So what that looks like, it's very different, but it can be a creative reaches out to us and says, I have a script and I have a character that's an immigrant and I want to talk about it because I want to make sure that I'm doing this character justice. And so we do that.
Important.
We do this consulting, but we also
I'm
are
positively surprised, sorry to interrupt you, that at least, the outreach and they are like, I'm a creative, I want to tell this story that includes this person. I don't have this experience, but I want to,
I want to be authentic.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it takes so much of a person to say, I don't know everything, and that makes it all the more powerful.
Exactly, because how can you?
There's 45 million immigrants in the United States. As our founder likes to say, that's 45 million stories and different ways of being an immigrant. So no one's ever going to, encompass the entire experience, nor should they. But no one's ever going to know everything there is to know. Even if you're an immigrant, like myself, I'm an immigrant, and I would still go to an organization like Define American if I had a script. Because I don't know everything.
Well, because your story is very different than somebody else's.
Exactly.
Depending on what your story is about. Yeah, absolutely. Well, a good storyteller does its research, right? They do their research. That's what makes a good storyteller.
Especially when you are like a Hollywood streamer, and you have the means to do that. It's because you are reaching a wider audience. So I'm glad that they start doing this.
So we do that, and then another big chunk of our work, and again, this is just specifically in the media and entertainment space because we do so much, but we also do and publish original research tracking representation. So for the past, I think, 6-7 years, we've worked with USC's Norman Lear Center, and we've tracked immigrant characters across TV specifically. So every 2 years, we do a landscape analysis, see what's gone up, what's gone down, what are the trends we're seeing, and then we publish those findings, and those are available for public consumption. People can see what are the stories that we're seeing, where are the gaps in storytelling. We're due for another round of research, so we're actually starting that very soon. But a couple of years ago, one of the big findings was how much immigrants were associated with crime and criminology. So this has always been high, but this last time it rose up to 40%. So of all TV characters over this 2-year span, 40% of them were associated with a crime. Which, if you, going back to politics downstream from culture, if all we're seeing is immigrants, criminals, then that's what we're going to believe. And so another thing that we've studied, and it's why I truly believe in this work, because we see the impact, and it's something called parasocial contact theory, which is also commonly known as the will and grace effect. So it's something it's a theory that states that audiences will create these parasocial relationships or imagined friendships with the characters that they see on TV.
Oh my God, I'm one of these.
No, me too. I literally
I think Andy Garcia and I are married.
Yeah, but you're like, I know this character. That's my friend. What? So so because of that though, people can be led to to take action on behalf of these characters.
Yeah.
So especially for groups of audiences or groups of people that they may not have real life associations with. So someone who has never met an immigrant before or interacted with them sees a show, then they're more likely to have a positive response to them. Like last time we studied Never Have I Ever, for example, and we found that audiences formed a parasocial relationship with the character of Nalini, who's a mom. And
yes, the mom for me is the best.
Yeah, there you go.
And the grandma.
There you go. There you go. So because of this parasocial relationship, we tracked that audiences shifted, and they were more comfortable with sending their kids to a school that had a large immigrant population. Yeah. And so that's real change. Yeah. Or like we tracked it a few years back with the show Superstore with the character of Mateo. We consulted on that character. That's actually how
the Superstore, I think, is one of my favorite shows ever.
It's such a fun show, but like we found that people took action. Like they called their representative. They took like a real action because of the relationship that they created with Mateo. Yeah. So this is a lie, I rambled, but this is just like
this is important.
We're all ears.
Yeah.
But this was just like a small example of the work Cuban-American is doing within media to shift.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I now that I've seen this show and I know this story that you're talking about, as a person who didn't grow up in the States, and I got to see that one, I was immediately, my experience, obviously, I'm an immigrant here. Like I had to go through this insane process, but I recognize that there are different parts and different, as you said, every immigrant has their own story. So when I saw it on TV, I felt closer to this person and closer to the process, and now I know and I can think, or I can at least imagine what a person might go through. Yeah. Because I shouldn't, or none of us should be like, oh, I know what you're going through, or what you're here, or what you're doing. No, you don't know, because at the end of the day, no one chooses to be a refugee. No one chooses to be an immigrant.
There's a reason somebody leaves, right?
Exactly.
Like that's I think one of the things that people like end up forgetting about. It's like, I mean, the United States is like, it's a country full of immigrants, and the reason for it is all these people were leaving persecution, or were leaving poverty, or leaving a war zone, you know, like there's reasons for people to leave, and I think you have to like humanize that. But the fact that people are taking like action to make a change via a show, like that's insane to me.
That's what I was going to say.
It shows you the power of media, which I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah,
like,
and the responsibility creatives have when they're telling stories.
But
Exactly.
on top of that, it's how you portray that immigrant. You humanize the story, and I think we should talk a lot about this. But let's move into the...
I mean, I think it leads perfectly into the Father's
movie.
Bride. Yeah.
The Father's Bride.
Oh,
the Father's
Bride.
Listen, English is not my first language.
Was it any of ours?
I don't think so. I had to learn a gibberish of 3 languages, so...
So, the first question we'd like to ask is, why did you choose this movie? Why did you pick this movie?
I chose this movie because it's become my comfort movie since it came out a couple of years ago. And we, especially in this day and age, there's so much anti-immigrant stories, rhetoric, like we've reverted back in so many ways. Like before, people have said illegal, which is like an incredibly dehumanizing word to describe an immigrant. And then it shifted, and then people would say unauthorized or undocumented. And then now you have Trevor Noah at the Grammys. Trevor Noah, himself an immigrant, saying illegal. Yeah. And it's just like normalized. Yeah. And so there's so much negative stories, negative portrayals of immigrants. And I watched this movie when it came out. And it came out HBO Max, whatever. They put it directly to streaming. But there was like a showing that they did. And I went to it, and it was like a theater full of Latinos from all types of world, and we were all just laughing. Yeah. And I held on to that feeling, and anytime like news gets too tough, I watch this movie. It's become very much. Yeah. And also, I'll say I've never watched the original. Oh, okay. So that's a crime. But like,
I mean, I think you have to go into this movie knowing that like a remake is a remake, right?
We need joy. We need to lead with joy, and this movie does that.
It was a fun movie, and as somebody who doesn't, I'm Italian American, right? So I don't have any context for like especially Cuban families, because like they were supposed to be Cuban and then there was a Mexican family, and I thought that was really fun to witness. And it's funny because like, I mean, Italians at one point were immigrants, and like some of the stories and some of the stuff that they fight on, even as an Italian, like looking at this, I'm laughing because I'm like, yeah, this is ridiculous, and this is what people culturally fight on, because there's a lot of cultural similarities and like that you can kind of pick out and be like, oh my god, this is fun.
Exactly. I don't believe that you coming from a different culture, you see that movie and be like, oh, I think I resonated with that or with this. To me, the nuance was that we got introduced to different cultures in Latino culture.
Yeah.
That was
interesting because
because
the
it's
two
not
dads
one, right?
fighting each other on silly little like different cultural things was hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's not one. It's not like Mexican or Cuban. Like it's not one. The Latino culture is very diverse. It's the same. It can be Mediterranean culture or with Black culture, with like Asian culture.
Yeah.
So that's what I found interesting in that one.
Well, because like the like I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when you say Latino in the United States, like, and when you think of immigrants in the United States, you think Mexico, you think Mexicans, like that's all your mind goes to because of the way the news talks about it, the way the media talks about it. It's like, and I don't think people realize that like it's a bigger spectrum.
Yep.
Like,
I know what you mean. For me, before I came here, I knew it was different.
Yeah.
I knew there were different countries coming from Europe,
Yeah.
or we're like between Africa, Asia. Like I'm Greek,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I know there are different cultures, different languages, different. So coming from Greece, I was like, okay, when you say Latino, it's a diverse spectrum.
Yeah.
But I had to learn here that usually people think it's attached to Mexican culture.
Which is so wrong, and then so it gets lumped. And one of my biggest pet peeves of Hollywood and just media is that you'll have a movie or a show, and you'll just write like Mexican or like Latino character, and then you'll cast like a Colombian, a Peruvian, a Mexican, a Cuban, but they're all supposed to be the same family, but they all speak Spanish differently.
Yeah.
And it's like, and like give each character what they deserve and each actor what they deserve. And that's what I really liked about this movie too, is that we had two cultures under this that have often been lumped together, and they were shown how different they were, and they were proudly different. But two, also because I feel like a lot of times, especially in rom-coms, if there's any diversity, it's like one character and the other one's white.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay,
and that was fun because I also thought that's what it was going to be coming into it. Like,
that's what I thought.
Introduces the boyfriend, I thought it was going to be like a white boyfriend and he was going to have like an issue with it. And when he was Mexican, I was like, oh, this is.
And he still had an issue with it.
He still had an issue with it. But it was fun, and I loved I loved also that like the father came from a very wealthy family in Mexico. That it wasn't like
exactly.
Exactly.
That was like, wow.
I also like. Side note, I love the scene when he's like bringing Mexican cigars and he's like Mexican cigars, and I'm like, I thought that bit was funny.
I think that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I think that Andy Garcia felt really nice talking about like making this scene.
He's really cute.
He was. It was fun. Yeah. It was fun. I also really just like. Yeah. I also loved anytime he would tell his story too.
Yes.
And he'd be like, when I came from Cuba, like I had nothing. And they're like, God, Dad, we've heard this a million, because that's the truth. It's like at some point I'm like, we get it. Like, we get it.
Yeah. And at the end, he even exaggerated even more.
Like
I came on a boat. I came on a plane. No, but again, I feel like that's so authentic to I mean, as somebody who's heard my grandparents talk about when our family came to the United States or what it was like growing up through the Depression and that kind of stuff, it's always exaggerated, and every time you tell the story, it changes and it gets worse, and you're always just kind of like, I get that it was hard, I get that you made a lot of sacrifices, but like, cool it, tell me what.
Sorry. I have a question for you, and I'm gonna read it because I don't remember.
Read it. I'm gonna have some tea.
The film Father of the Bride sadly addresses...
Or the bride father.
Yeah. sadly addresses immigration through the family's backstory. How does this compare to other portrayals of immigration in mainstream media? Do you think it succeeds in normalizing these stories?
Yeah, so I mean, one, I think it felt true in the sense we were talking about the struggle, like, of coming here and, like, building something out of nothing. I think that definitely resonates to a lot of immigrant communities, and also, like, the humor in the second generation, in this case the daughters, being like, okay, like, stop, we get it, like, stop talking about that. So I thought it was very, very nuanced in its portrayal, and I really enjoyed that. How it compares to other stories is, one, there was humor in it. And I think sometimes we're not allowed to have humor because for many people, the journey of coming to the United States is incredibly hard. It's incredibly traumatizing, and I'm never gonna, like, take that away from that because it's the truth. But I've also know from people I've interacted with, like from my parents, that you also sometimes you gotta laugh. Like, you gotta laugh at the struggle, or you gotta, like, make light of it because it's the way we survive. Yeah. And so, you know, it's very different in that sense. Like, I've seen so many stories, like, within film and TV even, that have, like, these characters, and it's, like, trauma, and you never talk about it, and that's all it is. And I think it's a very one-note way of playing something. And I think especially with immigrants, it's so nuanced and so layered that you have to like tackle it in different angles, which is why I enjoyed the way that Father of the Bride did it, where it's a huge part of him, it's a huge part of his character, he brings it up constantly, but, like, it's also not his defining thing too. Like, he built his life, and, like, he has other issues. It's not just, like, I'm an immigrant and this sucks.
Exactly.
Like,
he's a human.
He's a human. He's, like, divorcing his wife, maybe, potentially.
Yeah. He's an amazing architect. I love that.
Yes, he's an architect. That's
his whole, like, even character was, you know, based on his love of architecture.
Mm-hmm. Right.
To me, what was the most interesting is they talk about immigration, but also they had people from, like, especially the Mexican that he didn't want to migrate to the States.
Yeah, he was like, no, I have money.
Like, why would I?
Like, I can be in the States if I want to, but I don't.
Which, fair, if I had money, maybe I wouldn't have come here either.
I think a lot of people.
You know, something I do want to talk about in terms of, like, the immigrant story and, like, kind of, like, throw it at you. But, like, what I also found really interesting is how the fact that his daughter wanted to leave the United States.
Ooh, yes.
To go, she was going to Mexico, not to Cuba, but, like, that she was going to go to Mexico, she was going to work for a nonprofit, basically not achieve, or in his eyes, achieve the goals that he thinks is what is success and all the stuff.
The American dream, right?
Yeah, and then he has sacrificed so much, and then for her to go back, and I'm, like, that, I mean, I'm assuming, to an extent, is very, like, something maybe we're seeing now with, like, second or third generation.
Yeah, I mean, you have, like, you go to Mexico City and you have all these foreigners living there. Yeah. And then more and more you have people who, like, grew up here who are Mexican. Yeah. And they're, like, starting to go back. Yeah. And they're building a life different from what their parents imagined. Yeah. And I certainly considered it, like, when I didn't know if I was going to ever be able to adjust status, I was like, okay, maybe the U.S. isn't for me. Like, maybe I need to go back. And it's certainly not, I think, what our parents want, but it's because they, I think, have the trauma and carry the trauma of, like, they know what it's like when they were there. But also, like, there's, and it's difficult because, for example, I'm from a very tiny, tiny place, and it's very different than the place my parents left because it's changed. Yeah. But in their head, it's still the same place that they left. Yeah. But still, like, it's very rural. It's very isolated. Like, I couldn't go there. They still don't know what I do for work. Yeah. They're just like, what? Like, are you a lawyer? And so, pretty much, you know.
I could be something.
I could have been a lawyer.
Yeah. Maybe if they cast you as a lawyer, you never know.
You know, Hollywood. But yeah, like, but I couldn't build a future back then either. Yeah. So, like, if I were to go back, I would go probably to a city. But I think, it's like, it's that trauma and that they sacrifice so much to bring us here that they're like, how can you ever think of going back? Right. But times change. The U.S. is not what it used to be. Yeah. This idea of Exactly. This idea of the American dream is becoming more and more unattainable.
Yeah.
And so it really forces people to figure out what is my version, like what is my dream, where can I be happy and successful in the ways that I want to be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Talking about before, the work you're doing and how people are portrayed and how we get, like as viewers, a relationship with those characters.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the audience with this particular film would or should take from this movie?
Just like a love for these characters. Like they're so wonderful. Like Andy Garcia, we talked about. Like yes, he's a star. We love him.
Yes.
We love him. But like all the other characters, like the relationship with the sisters. Like one. Knowing that Cuban and Mexican are different.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Love that we could get that sorted.
Different food, different culture, different music.
Yeah. This is Cuba. Here. So like that and I especially audiences that are also creatives themselves to like think of the stories that they can tell. I love rom-coms. I love like this one, and so it's just so cool to be able to see immigrant characters like fall in love and have chaotic families, and that's it. Like they don't have to be sad. They don't have to have the sepia filter.
Yeah.
Like, no, like we can make fluffy movies like this. Like let's dream bigger. Like what's next? Like an action thriller or like superhero, like movie actually, like let's tell more stories. Let's like think bigger.
What I was gonna say, a line that it really hit to me, maybe because I had seen before One Day at a Time, which is an amazing series on Netflix. You should watch it with Rita Moreno. It's hilarious. The whole production is amazing. But he said something when he was talking about, I think with the Mexican dad, I like that we call the Mexican and the Cuban dad.
The Mexican and the Cuban.
Yeah. He said we came to this country, and he said, no, exiled. So again, it's a different history. It's a different background. He said that he's basically forced to go. It wasn't that he decided to go because of Cuban's history. And to me, that says that they did great research. They knew, where the characters are. Why do you think this movie was made in 2022? And how they were able to make it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I can answer that because I don't know the why of it. I think I can guess. I think part of the reason it got made when it did is because it's a remake and it's not an original story.
Yeah.
We were talking about how if someone would have come with this idea as an original, like we have a Cuban family and a Mexican family, no studio would have said yes. Like they would have been like, no, like rewrite it, like make it different, and make it, we need to appeal to the mass audiences. And now we have a very diverse group of women who all loved it and all could relate to it, which shows the power of being specific and sticking to what you want to tell. At the time it was being made, I mean, we see it a lot more, but we were still seeing anti-immigrant rhetoric. So maybe this was like a big, like, F you or like a stand that, what, we're gonna lean into joy and we're gonna tell stories of love and you can't do anything about that. And so I'm just glad it did get made.
Yes.
Because
it's a fun movie. It's for sure a fun movie, and so I'm glad too. I mean,
Yes, Andy Garcia, maybe he.
We should count how many times we've said Andy Garcia. Just put a little note right here, edit it right here, how many times we've said Andy Garcia.
And I'm glad you chose that one, especially right now.
Yeah,
it's more important than ever for especially the US audience.
Yeah, we need joy.
We need
joy, and I think it's nice to have something fun like that, and to, like you said, lighthearted, and it's okay to it's not an Oscar contender for sure. It's not one of those movies, but it's there's so many fun movies that are just you just put on. It's an easy watch. It makes you laugh, and you know, and earlier, like, I think one of the big things about great storytelling, no matter whose story you're telling, I think everyone can relate to just any story, honestly. You see a little bit of yourself in all these stories, and it doesn't always have to be the same thing. You don't need to be an immigrant to watch this and, like, understand it.
Exactly.
You know, like, because we all have family members like this. Like, you can picture yourself in this, you can see your family members in it, even if you're not an immigrant, you know? And I think that that's something that people tend to forget about is storytelling is, like, everyone can relate to it, you know? And that's...
Yeah, cinema is universal.
Yeah, and the specific is universal, too.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, exactly. The more specific your story, the more authentic it is.
Yeah.
So you feel like, okay, I'm going to identify, or you are identifying with something from the characters or the plot or event that's happening.
Yeah.
Is there a specific character that you really like or resonate with, or you believe it's very well written?
Andy Garcia.
Sorry. Honestly, no.
Answer your question. Not mine.
Let's all go around and say our favorite thing about Andy Garcia.
I mean, I know why I did ask that question, but...
No. So yes, his character for sure.
Yeah.
But I think also Gloria Estefan's character. I think she's like really, really well, okay. Oh my god, it just depends on when I watch it. I'm gonna highlight her first because, you know, she's one, like, I think, well, I'll say specifically Mexican culture, and I know that they're Cuban, but, like, specifically in Mexican culture, like, divorce is still very much, like, not a thing people talk about. It's not as normalized, and she's really, like, putting herself first and saying, this isn't working for me. You're, like, putting your work above me, and she's taking action, and she's strong for that, and she still gets to have a life. It's not like her world is falling apart. Like, certain parts of it is, but it doesn't define who she is. So I really like her, but I also really like Diego Luna's character because, going back, he's Mexican, and there's, like, a culture of machismo in Mexico and, like, of men being, like, very masculine, hyper masculine. And his character is so soft and does yoga, and he's allowed to be just,
he doesn't
like, you
drink.
Yeah, he doesn't drink.
He doesn't like sports.
Yeah, he doesn't like sports. He's like the anti. If you were to put like the stereotypical like leading man here, leading man in Mexico, like he is not it. And still, this beautiful woman chooses him to be her life partner.
Well, and she's much more masculine than he is, right? Because she was raised by her father. She takes a lot of his trait, which I think there's a lot of women like
she
that.
plays the dominoes and all, like in the beginning.
She likes sports. She's very much she's feminine, beautiful, but it has a very masculine. It's hard to say feminine and masculine now because it's kind of like, as somebody who like likes a lot of stuff that guys like she likes things that are not stereotypically associated to a woman. So and I think that's interesting.
I have to add on that to you. The same happened with the women in this film. They're not the stereotypical Cuban, Mexican, or Latin women. You know, the femme fatales or whatever. It's all the stereotypes. They were like actual people with their families, with work and dreams and hopes, and you know, they had their things that they were dealing with. Like the little sister wanted to do design, but she didn't want to do, like, even from the beginning, she didn't want to do the typical quinceañera. Am I saying correctly? Yeah.
I would just say with her, I did not like her dress design.
No.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
She's the one character that she unfortunately is the one character that fell flat for me because like I feel like there could have been more, and it felt like they might have gotten rid of some of the scenes. And I don't know. Like, this one's hard to know. Like if it was because they put the gay storyline in there. Was it because of that they removed it, or was it because the actors were kind of flat? Personally, I thought the actors were a little flat, and I think that's maybe why they got rid of some of the stuff. But yeah, and then the design of the dresses didn't.
Like, how are you gonna have her sleeve on?
I know, right?
It's like
it perfectly be the perfect dress. I think if I'm not wrong, they wanted to make a movie like that to be able to be like, this is for a mass audience. So we're not gonna go very deep, but we're gonna like show you the things we wanna show you in a very specific way. So it's like a comedy, a family film.
Well, and I do think that sometimes you have to be careful when you're writing. When you write like stories with like such a big family, right? With so many interesting characters. Sometimes if every character has its something, it just overwhelms the story, and then you're kind of losing the whole story was about, you know,
Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia.
Oh god, acceptance.
I mean, the father of the bride.
Yeah, father of the bride, and like, you know, his relationship with his eldest daughter, and it's like, I get that the younger daughter is supposed to be kind of like the forgotten one because they're so focused on the eldest one, but it's like, she actually felt very much forgotten in the writing or in the shooting of her scene.
Maybe that's what they want to do.
Maybe, but to me it felt creatively, it fell flat, which is too bad.
I understand.
But I think they should have just gotten rid of her character, to be honest. Like, to me, she didn't feel like she added certain things, but I don't feel like they dived deep enough.
You could have taken her and edited her out.
Exactly, yeah. But one tiny little thing, because you're talking about the divorce and the mom. One of the lines that I really enjoyed, and I think it kind of goes back to the American dream and coming to the United States and working hard. I love that she made that line where she was fine with what they had. And the reminiscence of like a time where you did not have money. Now you have it. Now you have all this success. And I really enjoyed that she was like, I liked what we didn't have, you know, and that moment in their life was so much better to her than having achieved this dream. And I feel like that's such an interesting also perspective to talk about when you come to the United States, and like this idea of like success equals money and this luxurious home and this luxurious life, but really it's like family and culture is more important. And I thought that was like a really nice, I don't know if it's like very noticeable because it's such a quick line for her, but I thought that was like really endearing and like, I don't know.
I think that's her whole like arc in the film also. That's why we like the characters. It was very down to earth. The mother was very well written for me. That's what I felt. She was very grounded. She knew what she wanted. And you could think in the beginning there were a lot of like visually how the characters were like sitting or they were portrayed. You could think this is a very, patriarchal family, but then there were some parts of the film, for example, the mom was driving. Like I noticed this little
I did notice that. Yes,
I was like, where are we going with this? Is it a patriarchal family or is it like a family that they're trying to figure out the balance? Because he never spoke about her bad, never. I like that the reason for divorce wasn't cheating. Because usually that was another thing. It was about him being boring person or he didn't like commit to the marriage thing or to the relationship as much as she would like to. So I think they played it very well at the beginning because you're like, oh, okay, it's the typical thing that happens to a lot of cultures. I think non-white cultures that we are very patriarchal, either we like it or not. But in this movie, they played with him losing his power, like because he said this thing.
He didn't really have it in the first place.
Exactly, and he was like, "I do not approve of this." And then the girl was like, I don't need your approval."
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't need your approval.
Yeah.
And I love that because usually it's like, especially father of the bride and a daughter, is the thing of control. Like, who owes you? I'm gonna decide. No.
Yeah.
And I like that his character had it almost 360. I mean, given in a comedy setting, obviously.
No, I agree. And I did notice that she was driving, so it's so funny that you mentioned it. So I think this movie does this so well, where it subverts tropes, it does reversals, like we talked about, like the women characters like having more traditionally masculine interests. But also I just wanted to add with the mom character, another line that I really love about her is when she calls them out and says, "Yeah, you built the house, but I made it a home."
Yes.
Like,
she has some great lines. Like, where you're just kind of like, that to the heart, really. We're kind of getting close to wrapping up, but I did have one question for you because it's another thing that gets brought into the movie I think a lot of key factors get brought in very quickly and then kind of not forgotten but just put aside. But there's that scene where they all meet and he asks why they're not speaking Spanish and they're all speaking English. And obviously, like, I grew up in a household where multiple languages were spoke, but, like, you know, somebody who's Mexican and, like, curious to know, like, because to me, I would love to see more content out there that has different languages in it, right?
Yeah.
And so...
Or different accents.
Or different accents, or just anything. And I think it's interesting because they touch on it, and I understand that they had to make the movie in English because it's targeted to the United States. It's not just targeted to one specific person. I think they want more people to watch it than just people who can speak Spanish. But do you feel like, I mean, how do you feel about that in terms of, like, Spanish is one of, like, the main languages in the United States. Like, they bring it up, but then they go back to English, and you would think that this movie should be primarily in Spanish, but, like, how does that feel to you, like, in terms of, like, the English versus Spanish thing, and how true is it, like, how much English is spoken in a home that, you know, in an immigrant home versus, you know, not, you know.
Yeah.
And to add on this question, because we talk about Spanish, but it's, again, so diverse. It's different to talk Cuban Spanish, I guess, or different dialect and accent, and Mexican Spanish. So this is also, as a person who doesn't speak Spanish, I could understand the difference, but was it like an authentic portrayal to you? To add to her question.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, but
You know, it's a big question.
Yes.
Should more movies be in Spanish?
yes. I was actually going to say that. The film could have been in Spanish, and I think part of the challenge is what makes it that English has to be the default language, because I think when Parasite won the Oscar for Best Picture, that really shifted the conversation to, like, why are we afraid of subtitles?
Yeah.
Like, why are we afraid? Like, when, I think the show was, like,
Squid Games.
I was gonna say Chernobyl.
Chernobyl.
Another word I cannot pronounce.
Yes.
But, like, one of the
What a great
criticisms
show.
of
Yes.
this thought, though, was that they were speaking English when the characters really should have been speaking Russian.
Yeah.
So my viewpoint is, if your movie makes sense to be in Spanish, why can't we make it in Spanish?
Right.
Like, why does it have to default to English? Why is that considered the universal language? Like, let's not be afraid of subtitles.
Yeah.
And the other point is, it's very different with immigrant families, because I'll say, like, with my own family, at first we were a completely Spanish household, but then my mom learned English, and then she wanted us to speak to her in English because she wanted her to practice, and I was kind of the one that was like, no, I want to speak to you in Spanish.
Right.
So, like, I spoke to her in Spanish, but my sister spoke to her in English, and so, like, my sister and mom spoke in English, but then when my sister grew up, she started speaking more in Spanish.
Right.
So she sometimes speaks to my mom in Spanish, but my mom will answer in English, and it's like this really weird.
I love that.
It's so cool though.
Yeah.
We're like, we understand each other, but
Yeah.
sometimes, like, I'm speaking to her in Spanish and my mom's answering me in English. Or she was so cute the other day, we were on the phone and she was like, like, you will not believe it, but sometimes I forget how to say certain things in Spanish.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, because she's made it her, like, she's dedicated the last 15 years to solely speaking English, so of course this is gonna happen. So yeah, so it's different for every family, but I definitely know of immigrant households where one person will speak in a certain language and the other one will respond in a different language, and it's just normal, and it's just the way it works. So, like, let's see that too.
Yeah,
like,
I wish we had seen more of that in the movie, and I'm glad that they, like, talk about it and then they go back to English and I feel like they're highlighting that they can't do it almost.
Yeah, they justify it. They justify it in their world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think...
And also, maybe, in a way, they're saying that we are in America, we have to speak English, because they were kind of forced to.
Yeah,
a
part
lot
of their
immigrants,
experience.
And it depends on your generation. Like, there's definitely people who have Mexican heritage, but who grew up in a generation where their parents weren't allowed to speak it. So when they grew up not speaking Spanish, and then they're made fun of. Like, they're made fun of for not speaking a language that they look like they should be able to speak.
Right.
And it's just so messed up. But
It is.
and then you mentioned something about being able to tell the different accents. I definitely can.
Okay.
I think if you speak Spanish, if you speak any language fluently, like, you can tell the different variations of it. So this movie, like, you can definitely tell, and I'm not sure if, like, the entire cast, like, for example, the Cuban family was all Cuban. I think it was mixed. Actually, I know it was mixed because Adria Arjona, who plays the bride,
Yeah.
she's not Cuban.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's that, and you know we still have ways to go. Yeah, it's a very it's nuanced, it's complicated. My viewpoint has always been like cast a character from the culture that they're supposed to be, and if they're not, like switch the script, like write it to accommodate the actor. I understand they couldn't do it in this film, but I think that's what we should do more of.
You know, on that note,
Is it a game time?
yes.
Okay.
So in this bag we have a lot of questions,
Okay.
and you are free to pick any of them
Okay.
and give us your answer.
Yes.
Okay.
They're
What kind of
hypotheticals.
questions? Okay. Oh, I love
Are they
hypotheticals.
They're kind of
Yeah, you see.
or like what if, what
Okay.
would.
If creativity were a sport,
Uh-huh.
which event could you absolutely dominate, and which one would you totally fail at?
I'll fail at. Okay, so creativity. Okay.
That's a big-
I would totally rock speed writing.
Oh.
I'm actually, yeah, I know.
Wow.
I can write really
I'm just
fast.
picturing you like.
Yeah.
I can type
No, you
decently.
mean like in terms
But
of.
like in terms of writing a script, like
Yeah.
I can. That's my superpower. Is I can pump out a draft very, very, very
That's
fast.
amazing. That is
Um,
an incredible skill.
What I would fail at is second drafts.
Going off of that, you we didn't mention some stuff about your personal work.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're a writer, you're an actress.
Yes.
So what things you like to work with, or what's the stories you want to tell?
Oh, I mean, immigrant stories are my
Yeah.
bread and butter. So like any script I write, it's definitely, you know, I talked about like let's see different versions of the immigrant story. That's what I write. It's like I do have a rom-com like script that I wrote with like an immigrant couple. It's
I'm gonna see if you listen.
Andy Garcia, there's a role for you.
Like you really do need to tally. How
Yeah,
much
You
you
really
said his name.
should. My guess is 36.
Yeah. I'm thinking 50 at this point.
How about you? What's your guess? How many
Every
times
time we said his name.
Oh, 72 comes to mind.
Yeah.
Okay, 72, 36, 50. All right. Yeah, so I like to write stories about immigrants, and I like to write very slice of life stories too.
Oh, I love slice of
What does
life.
that
Me
mean?
too.
Love slice of
What
life.
does
So-
that mean?
So it's basically it's known for being like slower almost movies where it's just like you get a moment in time of someone's life and you just like see it play out. So
Yeah.
it's not very action heavy. There's not like
Mm.
big
Not a big
drama.
arc,
There's not
yeah.
a big arc. It's just them living, and
Yeah.
it's like I really love that.
I love it
really
too.
love that. Yeah.
Okay, next question.
You love this. I love it.
Okay, if you could cameo, in any movie, which one would it be, and what role would you play? So I assume it's like an existing movie, or
Yeah.
Let's
like
do an existing.
an existing movie. Oh my goodness. Okay, Titanic, because
I could never think that you would be that one.
because I'm a young Leonardo DiCaprio.
I never had a crush on Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, young Leonardo DiCaprio was like.
He was cute. He is not. I mean, listen. I feel bad judging people on how they've aged, but he did not age very well. I don't.
Like
think.
not what
We
not
know
what
you
we
thought,
thought. Not what we thought. But like
You look like Andy Garcia, for example.
okay, 37 times.
He's beautiful.
Yeah,
Like,
he is.
But yeah.
He has something. I don't know what it is.
He's
It's
young. Like he's hot. He's always been.
I think also how he presents himself.
Yeah, it's the aura.
Do you,
yeah.
Can you guess which movie I would cameo in?
Amadeus.
Wait, which one?
Amadeus.
Which one's that one?
I haven't.
It's a movie about Mozart. It's like
Oh.
was made in the 80s. It's great. It's fantastic. Highly recommend
Okay, I'll add
Highly
to my watch
recommended.
list.
Hey, what would you do though? in
Oh,
Titanic?
well, if I could really be anything, The Door.
Sid did not. Sid
No.
did not.
She'd be like, "There's enough room for everyone."
I didn't know that you. No, actually, she's gonna throw Get Whistling and take Leonardo and leave.
You should play the life jacket, really. The extra life jacket for him. That's what it should be. Just to wrap up everything, one of the questions I'd like to go back to, just because we've been talking about immigrant stories and being true to their stories and true to just like everything that goes on, is there a place where people can look for more authentic representation, like a platform or
How to tell their stories.
how they tell their
better.
stories
Yeah.
or how to get in touch even with you guys and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, so check out our website, defineamerican.com. We're actually developing a version. We have like a beta version, but where we're going to house all the resources and tools we have.
Cool.
We do have tools on how to draft and create better, authentic immigrant characters. So, and we have our research and everything. And if you have a script or want us to take a look at, you can reach out to us. My email is my name, Dulce, at defineamerican.com. I always forget if it's .com or .org. But yeah, you can reach out to us. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
I had so much fun with you. Thank you for suggesting such a fun movie. And
Yay.
Thank you for being
hopefully
here.